In this video, we are going to talk about the transport of substances. Transport of substances could be seen as two forms through the cell membrane. Transport of small molecules and transport of large molecules. For the small molecules, there are two important kinds of transports. The first one is passive transport, and the second one is active transport. Passive transport به معنی چی هستش؟ انتقال غیر فعال. Passive transport به چه معنیه؟ انتقال غیر فعال. Is another name is diffusion. اسم دیگه چیه؟ Diffusion or passive transport. No outside energy is required. هیچ گونه انرژی بیرونی مورد نیاز نیست. The driving force in passive transport is concentration gradient or voltage gradient. در واقع عامل محرک در پاسیو ترانسپورت چی هستش؟ شیب غلظت یا شیب بار الکتریک. It itself could be seen as three forms: simple diffusion, facilitated diffusion, and osmosis. خودش به سه شکل دیده میشه. انتشار ساده for small non-polar molecules برای مولکول‌های کوچک ناقطبی. Facilitated diffusion انتشار تسریع شده for small polar molecules such as fructose and glucose. And it requires two kinds of proteins, carrier proteins and channel proteins. And the third one, osmosis, is a diffusion of water through a semi-permeable membrane. عبور آب از طریق غشای نیمه ترابه. Active transport, انتقال فعال itself, it requires energy. حالا که انرژی نیاز داره. This energy comes from ATP hydrolysis. این انرژی از هیدرولیز عاطفه میاد. Itself could be seen as primary active transport and secondary active transport. Primary active transport directly requires ATP, but secondary active transport does not require ATP directly and usually uses the concentration gradient which is provided by primary active transport. Transport of large molecules. Transport of large molecules is done through vesicles. As in vesicle hospital. In the case, it could be seen as two important forms: endocytosis and exocytosis. Endocytosis, exocytosis. Endocytosis itself could be seen as three forms: phagocytosis, pinocytosis, receptor-mediated endocytosis. In the case of phagocytosis, large molecules and invading bacteria are taken in by vesicles which are called phagosomes. در واقع مولکول‌های بزرگ و باکتری‌های مخاطب به درون میان از طریق وزیکول‌هایی که بهشون میگیم فاگوسوم. In pinocytosis and receptor-mediated endocytosis, pinocytosis is for liquids. این برای مایعات fluids and dissolved materials مایعات و مواد محلول are taken in by vesicles. Vesicles are much smaller than phagocytosis. The vesicles of phagocytosis are called phagosomes. Vesiculai phagocytosis بهشون میگه فاگوسوم ها. In pinocytosis, in fact, vesicles are much smaller. Receptor-mediated endocytosis is the last type of endocytosis. It requires receptor. For example, LDL. LDL is taken in by receptor-mediated endocytosis. Exocytosis, large molecules or macromolecules are expelled from a cell. مولکول‌های بزرگ از یک سلول خارج میشن در exocytosis.